So tonight's topic is going to be based on pets and the afterlife, which is what I've got on the screen here. I know that there's still going to be some people that are probably going to be arriving a little late in this session, but we'll see how we go anyway. All right, now, one thing I'll just go into discuss about pets and the afterlife is that our pets don't always leave us. I know that from my own experiences of seeing my pets, it's very comforting. It is extremely comforting. I still have my cat who is, had been deceased for the, oh goodness, was it last year or the year before? Time escapes me now. But she still comes up and nudges my arm, and I will wake up to feeling her nudging my arm. At first, I'd say to my kids, always question, don't take everything as being paranormal, because sometimes it could be our mind just playing tricks on us. This is, part of reality. Our subconscious can be so accustomed to certain things that we're used to it, or we expect it, and we can produce that sensation. And this is something that I say to people, not everything is paranormal. We can actually entice that sensation upon ourselves because it's something we're wanting to happen, or we're thinking about it subconsciously, but waking up and actually seeing her shadow moving over me, and I had a bit of a light coming from the phone, so I could actually see in the room. Many times I've seen, the shadow people standing at the end of my bed, watching me, not saying anything. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. So then I've got my pets, and then when I see them as a shadow, it's that they haven't completely manifested. When they begin to manifest, they're like light. They are like people, how, the people are. When I say light, they actually emit their own light. You could be in complete darkness and you would be illuminated. You would have the illumination coming off the spirit of your animal, your deceased animal. And that would be like, you would see it bouncing off the walls around that particular animal. I've got a couple of photos here you've probably seen already. This is Sam. This is my dog Sam. And here you can actually see, this is the first photo we took. Basically, he was standing at the doorway looking at me. Now the short hall is outside of my bedroom and so on. Here you can actually see him, and over here is a cat, but I was more focused on Sam. He was my baby, and he was a Chihuahua cross Foxy. Biggest heart you could find in a pet. He was absolutely gorgeous. So this is Sam. I don't know whether you can hear me. Let me just click that, make sure that you can hear me okay. All right, so this is Sam. And Sam was a Chihuahua Foxy. When he passed away, I was brokenhearted. I loved him so much. He actually passed away in my arms in the laundry. At the same time that he passed away, our pug let out this almighty howl, and he was actually crying. I remember saying, dear God, don't let him suffer, because he was an old boy. I had him as a second dog. Originally his owners, they ended up that, the woman fell pregnant and they didn't want dogs around. There were two of them, Sam and another dog. Well, my mother, she actually brought Sam over, and he was a pathetic looking little animal. Of course, I fatten up all my animals, spoiling them as you do. And he was absolutely adorable, you know, incredible personality this little dog had. And he even got onto the trampoline with the kids, you know, like he would be so excited. I remember some of the quirky little habits. He loved cheese, but he would take the cheese in the backyard and he would bury it. And then he'd go a few days later looking for the cheese and he couldn't find it. Obviously it had, you know, gone into the earth. But he just full of personality. And so, of course, to see him come and visit me, it made my day. So I could see him standing over at the doorway. And if you have a look here, that's the, you know, it's not a good photo because obviously I take photos in the dark. I don't use the flash because the flash, from what Spirit has told me, they don't like it. It hurts their eyes. So why would I do it to my animals? And what I find is that with the actual camera photo set thing on the iPhone, it works a lot better than the video. The video seems to have a lot more darkness to it unless you actually use the light. But I'm not going to put that light on if I don't need to. And I would prefer not to, I mean, like, because I'm told by Spirit, like, there was a time I used to use the light and they kept saying to me, turn off the light, it hurts our eyes. So of course I did. And so I thought, I'll just use the photo. So if you have a look here, here is his nose. Here is his eyes, his ear, his other ear, and he's actually got his mouth open. And then here's his body. You can't see his body very well, but this was the first photo I got of Sam after he passed. This one was, what was it? I think I've actually got it down here. 2014 was when he visited. It was January 2014, and this was December 2014. And as you can see here, he is, again, he's got his mouth open. There's his little nose. This is him right on the side. And that's why I thought I've got this, you know, photo to compare, to show this is him. You can actually see defined, his setting again, his little body here. You can actually, you can see his little jaw, the side of his head here. There's his little nose, his eyes, and there's his other ear over here, but it's actually down. And what was interesting is he had before he passed, about a year or two before, he had a cyst on his ear and we had to drain it. It was horrible, absolutely horrible. And it used to, like, it was filled with pus and blood and oh, it was horrible. Anyway, his ear became very deformed as a result of that. And so of course we, you know, I didn't know how his spirit was going to look, because they do take on what they last remember of themselves. This is with pets. With people, they can, what I've found is they can revert to a point in their life where they were feeling at their best. So you could have a person who is much older revert back to an earlier time in their life, you know, like when they were a lot younger, when they were healthier, when they were less overweight, as an example. Whatever point in your life you felt at your peak is usually what your spirit is going to look like when you come back. So this, you know, with pets, they aren't as vain as us, I guess you could say. So they appear how they know of themselves. And what's weird is you think, okay, well, how do pets recognize themselves? You know, how do they know how to appear? That's where there is no real knowledge of how I look. With pets, they are what they are. They know this is how we are. This is, you know, they don't have, as I said, they don't have that vanity. So they're not going to be, oh, I'm going to I'm going to look like a puppy, or I'm going to look like this. But it's a feeling, it's their feeling. So that's what I believe with pets, is how they manifest. One thing I do find is they are still as cheeky as they ever were. With Sam, he was such a lovable animal, and I've actually seen him many times with my dog Mozart. Mozart will be sleeping, and I would look over and I could see just the head of Sam lying behind him, because Sam used to always want to bond with the pets. He was always laying beside them. He was very close to our cat Pepper, and although with Pepper she hasn't really manifested per se to the point where I've taken a photo of her, but I did take a photo of another cat of ours called Amadeus. And this is Amadeus. Now, he was actually a stray kitten, and this, I don't know why the photo is so grainy, but I mean, given the fact here is you can actually see a light orb. It was swirling around him. He was sitting here. You can actually see him turning. So this is like within one day or one night. He was turning his little head, and that's how small he was, you know, like he wasn't a big cat at all, a tiny kitten. And so here he is turning his head. I don't know whether you can see him too well. Again, when you don't have any flash and you're not using that, you're going to have to be using whatever light source is coming off it, and it won't always be clear. And that's the problem. Once they get mobiles to a point where they can see in the dark and adjust perfectly, then you're going to have beautiful photos. And I'm looking forward to that, because the important thing is being able to capture the spirit anyway. And initially, and this is what's interesting, initially all I kept seeing was this orb moving around and dancing. Like, it was absolutely beautiful. Look at the size of this orb. And that was it, moving by, swirling about all over here. It was dancing around him. And that's all I was looking at, was this orb. And it wasn't until I actually took the photo I could see him. And I thought, my God, it's Amadeus. And what was interesting, the day that we actually had to take him to the vet, I knew that I was going to be seeing this cat at some point after, because I said to my guide, Soella, give me a sign if I'm going to have a visit from him. And sure enough, there was this like a van right in front of us. It pulled in front of us with the name Amadeus on it, and I think that was like a coffee brand or something like that. But of course I called him Amadeus because I had Mozart and I wanted to keep that theme going, if you know what I mean. So it wasn't as though it was a coffee thing, even though I like coffee. But we actually found him, and he had liver failure. Everything went bright yellow. I had this idea that I could beef him up. I could feed him and keep him, you know, keep him sustained and stuff like that. Just kept feeding him and making sure that he was nourished and had lots of fluids to flush the liver and everything like that. I tried everything, and he bounced back at one point, and then we just couldn't save him anymore. So he was, you know, we had to put him to sleep. Very, very sad. But we did bring his body home and we buried him. And he still is around us. I mean, the difference is also the way that the spirit appears compared to like a cremated spirit, if you want to put it that way. Not that the spirit is cremated or buried, but if the body is physically buried, there is a difference. There is a greater difference in the way they manifest. And this is something that I have noticed over and over and over again. with the ones that are usually buried, and this goes for people as well, there is this incredible, and I mean like beyond bright white, if you can imagine someone with a torch which has absolutely no hint of yellowing or anything like that to it, is just pure white, purest white you could ever get. That is the kind of light that comes off these, but the difference is it doesn't hurt your eyes. And yet with ones that have been cremated, they tend to have like, they have the light, but they've got like a bluey grey hue to them in some way. So as you're seeing the spirit, and I've noticed this on so many, and I've started to be able to recognize, okay, well, they've been cremated and these ones have been buried. And it's not that I'm, you know, I'm always being told by them either. It's like I've just come to realize, okay, this is, you know, through my own experience with my mother, with my grandfather, with my grandmother. I mean, they were cremated. I'm going to be cremated, so I'm not going to be bright white. My father was buried, and my grandmother, on like in America, she was buried as well. So their souls are a lot more vibrant, because I guess, and I'm only assuming, that as they go back to the earth, then it is, I don't know, they're connecting with a greater energy. But see, usually, and this is where, I mean, I'm a little confused on this, and I'm going to have to ask Spirit about it. But one thing that I notice is that when they are so illuminated, it is such a incredible energy. You can almost feel your nerves in your face, depending on how close they get. You can feel the nerves in your face jumping about. You can feel your eye twitching. You can feel the fillings in your teeth. They are like vibrating inside your tooth. Not always a comfortable kind of feeling. I'll just go back. Not always a comfortable kind of feeling either, but that is what it's like with when the spirits come closer to you. It is an incredible energy that they produce, that they give off, and it's electrifying. It's electric, and I'll do my best to answer those, of course. I can only always share with you what I know and what I've experienced, and as I said before, I don't talk animal, so I can't say to you that an animal is telling me who a murderer is. So if you've got any questions on this, feel free to ask, and I will. Okay, so I'm actually contemplating having a very come to my house to put my dog. Oh, a vet. Okay, she's old and not in much pain, but I'm afraid she'll pass as I leave for a long trip. Yeah. You know what? I really wish that with my cat Pepper that I had acted sooner. I'll be honest with you, because that poor thing, I originally had her, I took her to the RSPCA and I had them do her dental work. Now, because of the fact that she was always a house cat, and we had a cat run so they could go outdoors as well and be safe, there was no contact with other animals per se. It was like I was naive about inoculations and stuff like that, or whatever you call it, injections, and I, mind you, wasn't even asked by the vet was she up to date with her injections. And being so busy all the time, you just think, okay, you know, just pay this and have it done. And I just thought with the RSPCA, being so animal conscious and focused, that they would probably be a lot better, you know, because of the fact that I donate to them and everything on top of it. So they didn't say anything about it, and they had her booked in 3 months ahead to have this this teeth descaling and stuff like that, because she wasn't eating properly. They did the blood tests and everything like that, and they actually found out that she had the kidney problem and everything like that. And I thought, oh God, you know, my poor baby. She was so beautiful. Honestly, I would go to sleep and she would cradle in my arm, and I'd kiss her little head and she'd go off to sleep and she'd snore. Absolutely loved that little girl. I really, really loved her. All my animals I love. But anyway, they didn't say anything to me. And then the day that I took her in, they said, oh, all her injections are up to date. And I said, what injections was she supposed to have? And they said, oh, her you know, inoculations or whatever. And I said, no. I said, why didn't they tell me that before? And I was upset, but I knew she had to have this operation, otherwise she wasn't going to eat, because she was struggling. She was really struggling to eat. And I thought, okay, what do I do? I said, can she have it now? And they said, well, it's a bit too close to surgery. It's not in her system enough. I was so angry. And I shouldn't have been angry. I should have used my common sense. But because of the fact I do up to 16, sometimes 18 hours a day with readings and everything, and I'm, you know, not using that as an excuse, but it is an excuse because I just wasn't thinking. I just think, okay, that's what they're there for. They're there to help. They're there to look after our animals when we need their, you know, we pay through the nose enough and everything. And it got to the point where oh yeah, Sarah, Susan could hear my cat. Yeah, I know. She used to. Oh, look, I love her so much, honestly. Um, so I called her Pepper Poo. Long story. She was actually found as a kitten. The magpies were tossing her about. I thought it was like a car seat cover, like a part of a greyish car seat cover they were throwing about. Ended up being a kitten. And they said she wasn't going to live through the night, and that was the vets then. So, of course, she did. She made it, and she was a fighter. She was always a small little cat, though, and I had her sexed and everything because I just knew that she wasn't going to be capable of having kittens. And so she went kitten, you know, she had nothing to leave, basically. No little Pepper Poos left. But anyway, it was heartbreaking because after that surgery, and this is why everybody, if you've got a cat, please get their injections. Make sure everything's up to date, because if anything ever goes to that point where you've got to take them in and get them having an operation, they are vulnerable to anything that's going around in that theatre. And she ended up with such a bad condition. Her eye literally was pushed down into her cheek because it had like some kind of tumor that she had developed, and the pressure of that tumor pushing that down. I mean, that poor thing, she didn't show signs of being distressed. I even said to the vet, is she in pain? You don't know with animals. They don't talk like people. They don't say, I'm hurting. And even when I asked my spirit guide, is she in pain? She said, no, she's not in pain. But she's disorientated. And I thought, well, I don't want to be disorientated. I don't want to. And she said, she's going to be with you for a little while longer. And I thought, okay, do everything you can. Maybe, you know, whatever she's got, you can fix it. You can do something. And I put so much, and this is the thing where, you know, you might turn around and say, why does God let this happen? Why does God, you know, but it's not God. sometimes it's our stupidity, when, especially when it comes to animals, if we should be having this done for them and we don't do it, we are accountable. And I took full responsibility. But anyway, it got to the point, her what was it, her liver, well, not her kidneys, her liver failed. She was slivering everywhere. It was like late at night, threw everybody in the car. We drove to the vets, and we spent a little time with her. This vet, though, that's the one that they used to have on TV or something, Dr. I don't know what his name is, Sashes, I think it's called. I was upset with them because I was told by the man, just ring the bell or whatever at the counter, and then we'll come in, and you know, after you've had some time. I rang the bell, and it took him 10 minutes because he was in having a sandwich. By then she was already going into rigor mortis. Then he came in, and then he gave her the injection, charged us for the injection where the cat had already passed. I walked out. I was a mess. I mean, even though I still see the spirits and stuff like that, I was still affected by this because I knew this was final. This was no longer a time where I could physically hold her. Sure, I was going to be able to see her. Sure, I was going to hear her. But having that embrace and feeling, you know, that warmth that you would feel when you would hold them, and being able to smell their fur and stuff like that, it was no more. And I walked in and found my daughter, my middle daughter, sitting on the floor holding her body. But what gave me peace was seeing her walking around with her tail wagging, just like looking up as if to say, what's going on? You know, so she was at peace. She was free. She was free from that body, and she was complete. Her eye was fine, everything was fine, and all I could do was smile, and the tears, of course, you know, because I could see her. That was peaceful for me. And she came home with us, but her body was then taken, cremated, and put into the urn, which they charge a small fortune for. So it is something that I feel with every animal. If you're going to have them do it at the home, I think that would be a more peaceful location, instead of like an artificial location. With my cat, even though she was at peace and she was there still with us and left with us, because I could see her walking behind, following us to the car, and I just waited. I left my car door open because I knew she was coming. I knew she was coming with us. And as soon as she got in, then I closed the door, and my daughter said, "You let her in, didn't you?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I did. She's in the car with us." And so it was beautiful to know that, you know, our little girl came home. But I would have preferred her to had that at home, in our own environment, not in an area or a location that is foreign, that is cold, that's clinic-like. If they are in their own home, in their own environment, I feel like there's more of a peacefulness, especially if they're scared of like vets normally. I think that's more of a, I mean, even when I die type of thing, wouldn't you want to be in your own home instead of like in a lab kind of situation where, you know, I mean, some people, they can't help it. They might need special care, and the same with animals. They might need special care and stuff like that, but I think it's always important to be with them, when that time comes. Give them an opportunity of having peace, and not suffering. I mean, my poor little girl, she did suffer. She really did. And I was devastated. And I mean, what do? You're in that time where you know it's the best thing for them. You're still hurting. You're still, maybe there at the last second is going to be a miracle. And we always think that. I mean, even with people, we think that. But, personally, I'm all for euthanasia. So we're getting like on another topic here. But why should a animal be given a chance to go with dignity and not a person? That's my argument. Now, the second question, is it better to cremate or bury animals, humans? Is it down to personal preference? Well, of course, everything is a personal preference. And everyone has a right to decide what they want. I mean, with animals, we have no choice but to decide for them. You wouldn't put a carcass of your animal in the bin, as an example, and, just discard it somewhere like trash. There are some people who do. I remember driving one day. I don't know why. I guess I do, but I don't, because wasn't as though I heard someone saying to me, "Karen, turn down this road." I wasn't even, for some reason, I got in my car. I don't know why I was going in my car. I had no purpose of driving in my car. It was late. I thought, what the hell am I doing? But I felt drawn. I felt like I just had to drive to this certain location. I mean, anything could have happened because it was dark and I live in the city, and here I am driving out near the west. No idea why. And I just kept driving. I thought, okay, maybe I'm just trying to tire myself out. You think all these things. Didn't question it, just kept going. And then something said, turn now. And the only place I could turn was left into this, it looked like a dead end. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what am I going down here for? And of course, all these things are going through my mind. I'm starting to think, am I going to be witnessing someone getting killed? Am I going to be finding a dead body? What the hell am I being taken down here for? It was quite scary to me. I turned down this street. Right in the road is a box. And I thought, I'll get out and I'll move this box. As soon as I began lifting it, I hit, and I opened up the box, and inside was a puppy, and some mongrel had chopped its front legs off. It was bleeding. I thought, oh my God, they had just stuck this pup with no front legs. Back legs were there, but it was whimpering. It must have been in excruciating pain. So of course I grabbed this box with the pup in it. I'm talking, trying to soothe this poor little creature, terrified of me, can't move, can't get away from me, probably thinking they're going to hurt me again. They're going to hurt, because he was terrified. And I saw this sign, vet, and the light was on, everything. I rushed in there, took this puppy in there, and they said, if you had come 10 minutes later, that pup, we wouldn't have been able to save it. They saved it. And they actually ended up finding an owner for it, which was one of the vets. They made this little makeshift kind of trolley thing, or whatever you call them, that sort of straps around its shoulders, and it was able to move. And that pup had quality of life. But I don't talk animal. But I wonder what I think I've got a pretty good idea what its fate would have been if I didn't get that message to go driving, if I didn't get that message to turn here. And I can't help but reflect on that, and many, many times. And I think there are so many things in this world going on. There's so much cruelty, so many sadistic mongrels out there that people just turn a blind eye to. If you ever see anybody being cruel to an animal, report them. Don't even hesitate. Don't even stop and think it's none of my business, because it is your business. That animal has no voice. It cannot say anything. It cannot do anything. It is at the mercy of humans. But getting back to your question, is it better to cremate or bury animals than humans? Again, it is a personal choice. I'm going to be cremated. I've already got my plot, and it's at Liverpool Cemetery. So if you ever want to come and visit me, feel free, but please don't dig me up. I personally feel that once that spirit has left the body anyway, it really doesn't matter whether you're buried or whether your ashes are scattered over the ocean or whatever. That spirit's already gone. But the funny thing is, as I mentioned, they have a different type of energy, and I don't know why. I have no idea why. I just find it so interesting that, I mean, I know I've never really questioned it. I've never thought, you know, well, I've got to ask about this, but I guess I will, now that we're talking about this topic about, you know, pets and the afterlife and everything, because it does start to, it starts to bring up questions that I have had. I'm unfortunately not one of these people that ask a lot of questions, to be honest with you. With my family even, I don't pry into their business. With people that I speak with, I don't sort of automatically start, I wonder what's going on in their life and start trying to read them. I don't do any of that. I believe in, you know, a right to privacy. For example, with my aunts, there was one time my ex said to me, "What does your cousin do for a living?" I said, "I don't know." And he said, don't you ask?" And I said, "It's none of my business. Unless they volunteer that information, I don't ask." And this has been me all my life. I have never questioned to the point where I'm inquisitive about everything and I'm asking questions about this and that. It was always something, even a child, with spirit, it was whatever they told me, whatever they volunteered me, the information, then I knew. But I never really asked questions. And it's only been like of late, with people asking me questions about things, that I'm now at that point, I'm asking questions on behalf of people because I don't have all the answers. But I will ask spirit about what they think is best for the soul, whether it's to be cremated or to be buried. Suella's not around me at the moment, so I can't really say, "Oh, Suella, you know, what do you think about that?" I just don't have her here at the moment, because I just thought, you know, we'll talk about my experience type of thing with spirit, animals in spirit. So I love my four-legged babies. Yes, they are so precious. I remember when I saved Mozart, I actually got him from Wrenbury Farm, if anyone knows that. And it was not, 2 or 3 years after Sam had passed away. And I never thought I would get another dog. I just thought, no, there can only be one Sam. And in my mind, it was like, if I do get another dog, it's going to feel like I'm replacing or trying to replace that life. And that's not how I look at my babies. So, of course, I saw this dog. I saw his face. My heart I had to get him. There was no ifs or buts. I didn't even have the money. I honestly did not have the money. You pay out so much money on other things and everything like that. And I thought, how am I going to do this? I don't have the money. My daughter said to me, I'll give you the money. I said, no, it's going to come. Sure enough, the money came. And I went down there and I said, I want this dog. I was in such a rush to see him. I'll never forget, I actually slid down in a big thing of mud. All up my side I had mud because I was running to see this dog. And I get there and there's dogs everywhere. He was in a cage with all these other dogs. It was horrible the way, I mean, like, they were nice to them, they were kind to them, but I just thought dogs should be free. They shouldn't be like trapped, like stuck in a cage. It reminded me of something in Asia, like the dog farms where they have the dog meat and everything. That's what it looked like to me. And it was so cold and barren. The floors looked so, cold in their kennels and everything. And when I saw him, he sat beside me, but he wouldn't look at me, would not make eye contact at all. And then there were these other little dogs, and my heart was just for him. I know that sounds awful. If I could have taken all of them, though, I would have. Call me the dog or cat lady. I would have, absolutely. But I was there for him. He was on like 2 days off, being not even 2 days, a day or less than a day. They were going to put him to sleep, and I wasn't going to have it. And so, of course, I saved him. He got to sexed. Probably hated my guts because it took him nearly 3 years to even approach me voluntarily. He loves the car, absolutely loves it. And you say car, oh, he's at that front door straight away. That day when I got him and I picked him up from the vets, it was just, he was like in the car in a flash. But as far as looking at me, as far as coming up to me, no, wouldn't have a bar of me. And I thought, well, I'll give him time. At least he knows I'm not here to hurt him or anything like that. He then started fighting with the pug, almost to the point where he ripped through his ear. And I thought, God, I don't want, to have to get him sent back because he's going to be destroyed. It was an alpha thing, fighting to be the one in charge, 2 males. And so anyway, then it got to, so anyway, I was, what was I talking about? Oh yes, with my dog. When I got him, and he was at that point being quite vicious towards the pug, I was praying that I wouldn't have to send him back because I knew that they would put him to sleep. Then it got to the point, there was a competition on the radio, and I think it was Today FM, and it was, of all the things, the Pets Resort Australia, they were having this giveaway for 2 weeks. The pet could go and stay there at the resort, and they had the pool, they had their own bedroom with chandelier and everything like that, and they could stay at this place. Well, we won. I just kept giving thanks that a miracle would happen where something could help bring a bond between these 2 dogs. And the best thing was for them to be away from us. So there was no interference with the family or people taking sides and you don't do this and you don't do that. It was just them spending time together. And they stayed in the what was it, the room, it was like Tarzan room, I think it's called, where they had like a big plasma on the wall, big plasma TV, a jungle theme. They were 2 beds, one was a wooden bed with the covering over it and everything like that, and they had like their own courtyard with their their water and stuff like that, and artificial grass. Then they had the swimming pool. They could have beef popsicles in the summer or chicken flavored popsicles. It was great, absolutely great. So if you ever get a chance, that was at uh, Terryville, I don't know the name, out in Newcastle Way. Um, my cat always used to stare off in the corner of the room and meow like crazy. Then if I were upset, even if it wasn't the same room, he would scratch on our door until I let him in to give him affection, as though he could tell or someone told him. Can animals see spirit? Absolutely. Can human spirits talk to animals that are past or alive? Yes, they do. I've had cases where I've had these, I don't know whether you saw the photo. I put it up, I think it was on the High Priestess page, and there was this little child, and I don't know whether that was like brother or sister, but very, very quickly I took this photo, and you could actually see them standing behind Mozart. Mozart was sitting down, and he just like propped up straight away, because I could hear them talking. He obviously could hear them too. There have been times where he's suddenly started growling for no reason, and then things would start to fall in the room, like they were falling down type of thing, not being floating by or anything like that. It was just like things dropping. So he would see that, and I could be like, concentrating on something else, or, doing a little bit of, I don't do full on meditation, but I do relaxation. So they do see spirit, and spirits can see. I mean, I don't know whether you've seen that video of Tracy with the cats. Um, and you'll see her here. See, she's got her hands up. She's actually, this is Vader, our other cat. She's going to be like walking with her legs either side of Vader. So, what are you doing on the cat? Can you go back to the cat? Can you go back near the cat? Hi. I saw you. What's your name? Come back. You like the cat? Hi. You like the cat? Can you go and pet Pepper? That was Tracy, our other resident spirit. So she was interacting with the cats, and as you could see, it wasn't until she moved that Pepper then crossed away, basically, from Tracy. But they do see them. Recently, our cat wouldn't go into our daughter's room for weeks, as there was a spirit visitor in there. Well, it's very possible that there was a spirit in there. Without being there, I can't say there was, but if you actually do have evidence of that, then yeah, it's very possible that if they are not feeling comfortable with that spirit, like there are some who do torment the animals. I've actually got audio somewhere of these spirits that I actually recorded saying, "Get the bird," and you could actually hear, after he said "get the bird," this bird outside just just began going nuts, you know, like flying off and making such a loud noise. But some spirits do. They will, I don't know why. I don't know why they do that. I refer to them as the arsehole spirits. I'm pretty sure I have. It's amazing, really, how we interact with spirits. It is. It is very amazing how we interact with spirits, and more so how they interact with us. Suddenly want to go somewhere and you've got no idea why. It's not like you have to. It's not as though you've got to got any real purpose. And that's usually like how sometimes I'm getting communicated with, especially if, you know, like whether it's a cry for help or who knows what. But it is incredible how they interact in our lives. Sometimes I could be so preoccupied, you know, with like on a hype, if you want to put it that way. If I've been doing reading after reading after reading, it's sort of like I'm on autopilot and everything is just like bang, 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 bang. And then it's very hard to switch off. For me, it's very hard to switch off. It's like I'm constantly hearing them. I'm constantly seeing them. I'm getting all different types of messages, that type of thing, but I'm not questioning, if that makes sense to you. I'm not questioning why they're there. I'm not questioning what the purpose of them being around. So with animals, I actually can honestly say that if you are close to your pets, there's a great chance that many pets, even from when you were a child, will be around you. You might even have dreams of them. And just as we can dream of our loved ones, we can dream of our pets and have that visitation through dream. So don't ever think that your pets have just, you know, they're gone and that's it. You know, even if you do get them cremated or whatever, they will always have the opportunity of coming back around you. And with pets, I don't really believe they reincarnate anyway. I don't believe that with pets. With pets, they have basically the one life. They come into our life, and because they're such a pure spirit, they're what I refer to as the unblemished spirit. It's men that can, you know, cause a pet to go bad. If you go messing about with genes and stuff like that, or you begin tormenting animals from an early age, they're going to turn nasty. They won't trust people, and they can, you know, like without any cause, they can attack. Sometimes, and I've actually seen this too, I've seen animals go after a person, but they're not attacking that person, they're attacking what's with that person. Such as if there's got like for example, an arsehole spirit that is around that person. Even with children, sometimes, you know, when children can do things and you're thinking, why are they just so naughty? Why are they being naughty? There's no reason for that child to be just continually naughty. And for some reason you might be thinking, you know, they've got ADD or they've got this or they've got that. It's not always a case of that. A lot of the time, from what I've seen, the child's absolutely normal. It's what's influencing that child. So animals can go, you know, they see the spirit and they can actually go after the spirit, but the spirit may be clinging to that child or that person. And so what happens? You have a dog biting a person. Not that they were biting that person, but they were biting that spirit. So of course the dog barks. So you heard Chris? He went, mm-hmm. Now, are there any questions that you might have that I haven't answered? No questions, as you've answered what I wanted to know. Great. How can I encourage the visitations from spirits? Well, it depends on what type of encouragement if they're going to be around you, they're going to be around you. You won't even need to try to encourage them. Just know that sometimes, just as soon as they can turn up in your life, they can go. There are times where, I mean, with me, I'm always welcoming, but I never force them to turn up. I never force them to come through. Earlier today, I had a case where a spirit turned up saying, I necked myself. I'm like, okay. And I asked the person that was having the reading, I said, you wouldn't happen to know a male who hung himself, would you? She said, no, not at all. And I said, okay, this one's around for some reason. I don't know who he's for. It could be another one of my clients, you know, or he might even be connected with somebody in the live stream. Who knows? But just be careful of what you're encouraging. This is all I can say. If you can't see the spirits, and you can, like, I don't know your limitations, but I know with me, I'm seeing them, I'm hearing them. There are times where, you know, I've had occasions where I've had the ones that are not nice, and you can't encourage it too much unless you've got some way of being able to control in some form. And with spirit, it's very hard to control. Once you let them in, that is it. They can stay, and if you don't have that proper protection around you, then you could be inviting anything. So I always say to people, be careful. It's not all fun and games. You know, people, they get this idea that, oh, communicating with the dead and communicating with spirit is fun, it's exciting, but it's not. It's not. You know, there are times where I wish that I didn't see certain things. I wish that I didn't hear certain things. It's really important to just be very careful about what you're wanting to happen around you, because you will have ones that will pretend to be your friend. You'll have ones that you think are really sickly sweet, they're there for you, but after a while they can turn you against people. They can turn loved ones against you. You could become a different person altogether because the influence that they can have on you. They can start feeding you a lot of things. I remember when I was living in a unit over in Marylands, this unit, whatever was in there, and I think I told you on one occasion through one of my talks that a guy that I was dating, he actually saw this tall dark man running down my hallway towards the living room, and he came out saying, where did he go? And I said, who? And he said, this, you know, tall guy. And what was weird is, prior to that, I was having like these nightly visits from this, I don't know what it was, because I could never see his face, never ever see his face, but he was trying to have sex with me. This was a spirit that was just always trying to get overly friendly. It terrified the crap out of me because I had nowhere to go. I could not just escape this thing. It was there. I would get home. If I went out on a date, I would come home to my place turned upside down. This thing, whatever it was very negative, very angry, very, very jealous, very, you know, like controlling. It got to the point I was turning people away from me. I didn't want anyone to be around me. I was starting to be nasty in the way that I would treat people. I would start all of a sudden just getting abusive, and I had no control over that. You've got to be careful. I mean, if a person who can see and hear spirit has a certain amount of, okay, how much control can am I limited when you've got some very strong spirit energy? You've got to be careful. I wouldn't say to you, oh yes, by all means encourage spirit to be around you. You don't have to. Let me just say that. If you have got a spirit around you, just be careful what you're wishing for, because my God, it's not as fun as people think it is. It's not like you can just say, okay, well, I don't want you around me. You could be hit, you could be attacked, you could be, I mean, I haven't got to that point where I have ended up with scratches over me or welt marks or anything like that, but I have seen people who have. I've seen people who have done absolutely nothing wrong. They could be sitting there 1 minute, end up with a black eye the next. Like all of a sudden their eye would start to like turn bluey black, and like this bruising would start to come out of nowhere, and this red eye. I had one woman I was doing a reading for once, and I actually went to her home. This is when I used to go to their homes, and I felt something so incredibly negative around her. I was feeling nauseated, and as she was sitting there talking to me, she was telling me, like, after I began feeling nauseated, she said, oh, I was wondering how you would react. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, I've been, doing like spirit conjuring. And I said, but why would you do that? And she said, oh, because I just wanted to have spirits around me. And I said, do you even know what you've invited? She said, well, not really. I was hoping you could tell me. I said, whatever it is, I feel sick. I absolutely feel sick. I could not smell any foul odor. I could not hear any growling or anything like that. This thing was very deceptive, but I felt there was something wrong. As soon as I walked into that place, at first I thought, oh, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's like, like some people, not everyone. I mean, there are some people who do not have a certain level of cleanliness. It happens. People, are just sometimes not all overly cleanly. And if they smoke, of course, you can be very sensitive to the tobacco smells and stuff like that. So at first I was trying to justify, okay, maybe she smokes and maybe I'm smelling some smoke and subconsciously it's making me sick because I can't stand cigarettes and everything. But it wasn't. It's very important to know that if you're dabbling into something and you really don't know anything about it, just be careful. It's not like a walk in the park. You could be not so much affecting you, but people connected to you can be affected. That's why sometimes I do worry as a mother for my kids. Like my daughter, that time when she came in saying, can you put the spirit box in my room? And I said, what? I said, no. And she said, not me use it, but can you bring it in, because someone's around me talking. Someone's talking around me. She's like on the 2nd floor. The window was shut. Because I said to her, did you check everything first to make sure? And she said, yes. The voice was coming from different directions in the room. And it ended up being a child. But then this other voice was coming through the spirit box. And that's what worried me, is because, okay, well, I didn't get her personally to use the spirit box on her own. I would never say to her, you go and do it. I wouldn't encourage it on her or anything, but she said maybe it needs some help. I don't know, and I thought, well, I don't need the spirit box, but she wanted proof. So by recording it, she could have proof. And this is what happened. It got to the point where this child was coming through saying, pleased to meet you. Can you say your name, please? Are you watching over Tammy? Are you her friend? Yes. Are you Tammy's friend? Good. Do you like to be around us?
Yeah. Where are you from? Are you an angel? A ghost girl. Was that your voice then? Can you yell out, hello, Tammy? Did you hear the little girl? Can you say hi, Tammy? Can you say hello, Tammy? She can hear you. How old are you? 8. Did you hear? What's your name? Your girlfriend. What's your name? Do you have any friends where you are?
Okay, so what did you actually hear? Tell me what you were doing first of all before you heard the voice.
Well, I was like lying in my bed.
Mm-hmm.
I was like on my iPad looking at photos, like maybe rainbows, or like looking at things like cats.
You have to talk up.
I was like looking at cats and like rainbows and all those kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard like gibberish talking.
What do you mean gibberish? How did it sound? Can you make that kind of sound?
It was like that.
You have to come closer because this might not record you properly.
It was kind of like something, or maybe like a kind of low whisper that could be able to hear,
Okay.
but you can't really understand what it said.
Mm-hmm.
And it was strange because it was like and like everywhere, like it was left, right, straight, and then back.
So all around the room.
Yeah, but it was weird because just only one voice instead of like 4.
So just to clarify, who was home that night? Was it just myself and yourself, or?
It was me. Naomi was asleep, and you and me were the only ones awake.
Okay. Alright, so when you actually heard this sound, did it sound like a child or an adult, or was it male or female?
It kind of sounded like a male, and it was like an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And like it sounded like it was like bouncing across the room.
Okay.
No, actually.
Do you think it might have been Chris?
Probably. I haven't really heard his voice, or maybe.
Okay. So, because Chris has a bit of a deep type of voice.
It was like kind of in the middle of light and deep.
Mm-hmm.
So it isn't really like really deep. It's like light and deep at the same time.
Okay. And you couldn't understand what was being said?
I couldn't understand the context.
So how long before you came in to ask me to bring the spirit box in was it?
Well, how long I stayed in there after I heard the voice, I just got up wondering, what was that? Was it Mom? No, it couldn't be Mom. Was it Naomi? No, I think Naomi's asleep. I can't hear any videos she is like watching, and I didn't dare to look out the window because I don't really like windows that much.
Okay. So.
And so I just got up, and then I was like sitting on near the borderline of the bed, and I was like staying there for a few minutes until I realized, and then like I started to run to your room because I didn't like when I hear a voice and at the same time it's dark. I don't like that, so that's why.
So your light was out?
Yeah, my light was out.
Okay.
And the only source of light was my iPad.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay.
And probably the lights outside the window. But it was like kind of closed half. It was like the curtains were kind of pulled back, only a tiny bit.
And was your window open?
No.
Okay.
It's closed.
Alright. Okay, so when you came in to see me, what made you feel it was important to use the spirit box?
That it could be a ghost, and that you have to contact it to see if it actually is it, or maybe you're just thinking it, because that can sometimes be the problem if you are a bit cuckoo. Or probably it's like outside of like a yell that sounds too far away and it actually sounds like an actual voice.
Right.
And yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And so through that we actually had quite a few that came through, didn't we? And after we did that and they went, did you have peace for the rest of the night? Good. Okay.
I think all we had to do was like bring in that spirit box so for them to know that I'm kind of a bit scared of how the voice was. Well, I really was scared.
Oh, okay. Because you couldn't understand it.
Yeah, I couldn't understand it. That's half, and the other half that it was nighttime. It was very dark, and that the only source of light was
Meet
my
you.
iPad.
It wasn't sinister, but there was something that was actually trying to get through. It was something else trying to get through. We had a case where in 1 quarter our electricity bill went from like $400 up to $1,000 in 1 quarter. There was nothing being different in our home, nothing at all. There was no, I mean, we don't watch television, so there was no television. There was nothing new purchased. There was nothing that was, you know, for any reason draining that energy. But when you can get something negative in your home, it can affect a lot of things. It can affect your appliances, and that's what we faced. Our bill just went, you know, up to nearly 50% more extra usage or so, or I think they said, what was it, 83 or something. I can't remember. I don't know if I've got this in this room here, but it was incredible. Actually, I might even be able to find it on the app to say, where is it, to see what that last, because it was the last bill. Oh, okay, this is so weird. Now nothing's turning up. I've got nothing showing up. What the hell? Alright, now you might be able to see the graph. So, let's see. Alright, look at that graph. See that jump in here? This was like 1 bill back in summer, or whatever, and then there's the second one, and this is like the highest it had ever been. Outrageous. it was like, the total actually was $1,267.32. And previous to that, the regular rate was $425. So there's nothing different. This is how spirit can affect things. It can, I mean, if you're ready to pay more as well, start saving. It's crazy what you can go through. We've got here, definitely keep that in mind. Thank you for sharing your experiences. No problem. Sonia's late, but here. My daughter got pinched and I watched the mark come up on her leg. Yeah, there's a lot more things that can happen, trust me. Honestly, it can be a situation that you will... Oh, and just to add to, we have gas for our hot water and our cooking. So that just shows you how much power was surging through this home. And everything had been rewired in our house. It is an old house, but everything has been rewired, so it is just through the roof. And I had the electrician out to check everything. Everything's fine. They can't explain why the power would be so increased when they can see that, you know, from the thing, nothing's really changed, because with those meters they can actually see how much usage per day on certain things. But the end result was like, they said maybe it's a fault in the thing. They tested it, there's no faults. It's like the hour that it happened, this surge of electricity that it happened, was between midnight and 5 a.m. Midnight and 5 a.m. The house is asleep. I get up around 5. In the time where I was sleeping, activity was just sky high. I've had cases, I don't know whether you saw the video, where I did have actually one of those full spectrum cameras facing the short hall, and the amount of energy you could hear actually coming up to the camera, and the mic on the camera was like interfering like crazy. And this is and this was the one where the spirit was talking about, you know, he was actually swearing at me to wake up. quite vulgar. I feel my ears popping from the pressure of spirit when they come close to me. It's like all of a sudden, it's like, you know, when you, for example, if you put your hand into a container or a bucket or some type of tube of water and you can feel the pressure around it, that's what it feels like with me. It's like pressure around my ear and so on. So, but just be very careful with what you're asking. I just can't stress it enough, because as with myself, I will say at the beginning of the day when I begin to do my readings, I do welcome spirit, but I will not force you, and I will not encourage you to talk to me. This is another thing too. Some people say, communicate with me, rap on the walls, or, you know, make something move, or stuff like that. If you're testing them, don't forget, it's tit for tat. There will be ones that say, right, if you expect me to jump through hoops, I'm going to make you jump through hoops. I'm going to make you earn it. I'm going to make you suffer. If I've got to do something for you, you're going to pay for it. And don't think that there are spirits that won't do that. There have been times where health has been affected. I've seen cases where, you know, the person, they're mucking around, you know, asking spirits to come into their home and stuff like that. Would you open the door up to a stranger? Let me just ask you that. Would you open up the front door to the world and say, you can walk into my home anytime you want? Spirits, you've got to remember, a lot of times are people who used to walk this world. If you are inviting that, and I know I'm probably harping, but I have to make you understand. I really do. Anyone who has that mindset that it's okay to welcome them in, you've also got to say, you got to get out of here. But have a reason for them to be there. Don't just, you know, oh, come into my home, you're welcome. That's all lovely and nice, but it's like inviting a murderer into your home, inviting a thief into your home. They are wary. There are spirits out there that are very wary of the living. They will approach them cautiously, but there are cunning ones. There are probably more cunning spirits out there than there are legit kind spirits. I am very lucky in the fact that with Suella and with Chris being so protective, especially with Chris being so protective, he was not one that I welcomed into my home. I wasn't, intentionally asking for any particular spirit to be around me. I was happy for them to be at the office, no problem. But I would always get to that point where I'm having to bless everything, do the cleansing every single day, every morning that I get into the office, every evening when I'd leave the office. So it wasn't just, like get into the office and then do that cleansing in the morning. It was when I was leaving as well. And then through that night, it was incredible the amount of, because when people walk into your office or whatever, they're bringing with them things from outside. They're using that as a leverage. They can be attaching themselves to that person. It can be very scary. I've had cases like in the past, and this is why I don't really miss the office anyway, because there were times where people would turn up and I would see around them certain things, like really, if you think of Insidious, where that spirit is like looking behind that man, that's pretty much how things are. When they've got an attachment or they've attracted something to them, and they walk into your home or whatever, if you can imagine, you can't say to that person, look, get out, I don't want you in here, because if that thing is attached to them, it can automatically attach itself to you. it can, you know, it's incredible how vulnerable people really are with spirits out there, because they're everywhere. They're not just, you know, congregating in one area. They're not congregating in an old home. They can be in a brand new environment. They can be, you know, walking beside you in a shopping center. If you've been somewhere, for example, like in a shopping center or in an aisle, and someone walks past you and you just get this feeling like, oh, keep away from them, there is usually something that is walking with them or attached to them, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the person. There are some people who judge others on their looks per se, but with spirit, they can be looking very innocent and they could be hiding something very sinister. So I really can't stress it enough. Just be very careful. It's not fun and games. I honestly, if I were to say to a person, if I had a choice, if I had my time over and I had a choice to have this or not have this, I would not have this. I'm telling you now, I would not have it, because I see too many things. I hear too many things. Imagine waking in the night, and I'm going to give you one example. And it's not a lecture, by the way, but I just need to put this out. You wake up in the middle of the night hearing around you voices saying, I'm going to cut off her breast. I'm going to cut her cat's throat. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And you're so tired, you can barely get up. And that's what you've got to listen to sometimes. That's the kind of spirit energy that can be around you. And that's only because you've said, I welcome you if you want to come through. And this is the thing too, when I'm doing readings for people, I don't know these souls that they are wanting to hear from. They may be wanting to hear from their brother who was who used to pull wings off flies or torture animals, or just be very, very cruel or nasty or very sarcastic. I could be inviting into my home any type of character or personality. It doesn't mean that just because they're on the other side, they're all friendly. I've sometimes have had occasions where my animals have cowered into one room. They just won't come near me, and I know something's around me, not showing itself to me, but showing itself to animals, because they're very highly perceptive. So it is really important. Just be very careful, and probably have a second thought about inviting spirit around you. Ask your guides, you know, ask your angels, connect with them. But with spirit, as in, you know, the living dead per se, just be careful. You don't know what their temperament is. They would, you know, they can be not very nice. What's this? One of my 3-year-old grandsons have been seeing a spirit, but he says it has a sheep's head. Okay, well, I don't know what to say about that. I personally have never seen a spirit that has had a sheep's head. It could be that the way that the formation of the spirit is appearing, it looks or resembles a sheep's head, but it may be that it's forming, it's still in formation. Because when spirits want to show themselves, then they begin to sort of like rise up. They don't sort of like come down and then form. They rise up and form, basically from the floor up. I remember as a kid, there were certain spirits that looked strange to me, and there were like those little kids at the school. I thought they were all wearing masks, but it wasn't. It was that they were burnt in a fire, and to be identified, you know, by like the secretary of the principal, when I said to them, you know, the kids have got really bad skin, or they've got funny masks on. I can't remember the words I used. I mean, it was a long time ago, but I described them and told the secretary of the principal that they live behind the school in the house, the funny looking house, and the house that I was seeing wasn't the one that was there, because it was actually a different house. That once I realized that that house that I was seeing wasn't technically there, I was seeing the house they had, it was quite confronting for me, because everything, all my perception, my whole vision of what I was seeing completely changed. It changed, and I had no comprehension of why. I had no rational explanation. So as a kid, it was very confusing and confronting to me. But it ended up that the reason I couldn't see that house that I kept seeing them go into is because that house had long gone, and the mask that I thought they were wearing was actually them being disfigured, because they all died in this house fire. They used to have candles going in the house. The mother was mad about candles. I mean, I'm mad about candles, but she had candles going and left them going when they were sleeping, and so as a result the house caught fire. And whether it was that or the old kerosene heater, because back in our day kerosene was the in thing for heating, and we used to have the kerosene heater in the lounge room. You get the smell of kerosene through the house, but you know, that's how it was. And I'll never forget that. It was like, after knowing these, you know, and being confronted with the fact that these friends that I had were actual spirit, they stopped seeing me, or they stopped visiting, and I was devastated, because they were my friends, and I felt that because of me finding out their secret or whatever, or being told about, you know, that they were deceased and I can't be seeing them, I felt it was all my fault that I had no more friends. I found it hard to make friends in school. I was a bit of a loner, so I don't know. I don't know what to say when people are saying their kids are seeing things differently. It's quite likely that they're seeing that spirit forming, or maybe disfigured, which could be very possible. It could be a case of that being a disfigured spirit. I would probably suggest in this case that ask your grandson, I mean, try not to encourage him too much, because this is the scary thing too with kids. If you are encouraging them to talk or connect with that spirit, you don't know what that spirit is. And if they are saying that they look like this, or they're scared of this particular thing, and you're asking them to talk about it, it could be a case of making them more vulnerable, making that particular child more susceptible to being connected by these beings. And I wouldn't force it even on my kids. I wouldn't say to them, okay, I want you to tell me, you know, I bring it up about, okay, I want you to tell me what this one sounds like, or what this one says. With my daughter, for example, I say to her, you've got to rationalize in your mind first. You've got to do a process of elimination. I mean, she's at that age where she can. She will say, okay, is that voice coming from outside? She'll look outside. If there's no one under the window, which there is no laneway or anything like that, then there's nobody there outside. Being so high up and with the window shut, for example, which that was that night, she couldn't say that it was somebody, you know, like noise being carried from outside inside, because she said she heard voices. It was behind her, in front of her, beside her. And then she said that's when she ran, because as soon as she sort of like felt it move off to the side, she ran and she came in to get me. She also went through her mind like, okay, no one's up at this hour, like as in my sister's asleep. She hasn't got anything going in her room. Mama hasn't got anything going in her room. We can't be TV because we don't watch TV. And having to do that process of elimination, it's really important to identify with the fact that, okay, is this noise that is being carried from something else? Is there something, I mean, I'll give you an example. We had one spirit who was determined to get our attention, so much so that this particular toy, what was it, one of those gremlin toys, would suddenly turn itself on. And when I say turn itself on, I mean turn on that little knob to on. It was off, and it was sitting for a good year or more under, in this like a picnic basket kind of thing, under my daughter's bed, and nothing, absolutely nothing, because it was off. And this particular night, all of a sudden this thing started making noise in the middle of the night when everyone was sound asleep. All of a sudden we get this hee noise, really loud, if you know how loud they are. And then it started making these noises like wee, whoa, you know. And I thought, go to sleep. I thought it was my daughter. So of course I get up, only to realize as I turn around, she is in my bed. She's been, you know, came in and she slept in my room because of the fact that she said she was being disturbed. And so I go into her room. As soon as I turned on the light, no noise, nothing. As soon as I close the door, to like turn off the light, close the door and start walking back to my room, off it goes again. And I said to her, where is that thing? You know, she said it's under my bed in the picnic basket, because there's this like love heart picnic basket thing, and it's used for like storage basically, you know, kids stuff. I opened it up and this thing started making noise and shaking, like it sort of like gave this shake kind of thing, which was really weird. And then it stopped and I heard a click, and as I looked when it was doing that click noise, I could see the little slider, the little button, the on off button on the base of it moving by itself. Now no toy can do that unless it's being manipulated, but this thing didn't want to show itself, but it was playing with this toy. And as soon as I said, okay, I know you're here, I heard like this really, you know, like a laugh kind of thing. I did not feel comfortable with that. So of course, half asleep, exhausted from doing a whole days of reading and everything like that, I'm having to go through my home doing a smudge, a full proper cleansing. And it's not something that you just, you know, can walk through burning a smudge stick and that's it. You've got to do the whole procession. You've got to open up every single door, even to the point where if you've got CD cases, open the cases up. Anything that any spirit can hide or find a place to you know, hide, you've got to go through and open up every drawer, every cupboard, everything that, you know, any place that this thing can get in. If you've got handbags, you've got to open the top of the handbags, do the smudging over that area as well, do the prayer, and it's got to be consistent. You've got to continually pray. This is why I think, why are people telling people just walk through with a, you know, a sage stick, burning it through a house? That's not going to do nothing. You've got to actually have the prayer behind it. You've got to have the intent of removing that spirit from the home. And in the same process, you can be not only removing that spirit, but the prayer being so intent that it can remove even your resident spirits that are there protecting you. So just be aware of that. So anyway, I think I've gone off track. We were talking about one thing, then going on to something else, but it is all, I guess, important. So what else have we got? What's that? What, Regini? I've missed something here, obviously. So this is the thing. I'm seeing one thing on the page on the browser and I'm getting something else. Oh, hang on. Alright, so I can scroll back on here. Great. So Regini said, is there any way to know if bad spirits are around us? Well, let me just say, they don't all smell. Some people, I have to laugh too, because there are times where I've been, you know, I've watched on YouTube or something where they're saying, oh, you get this smell of sulfur and that's a bad spirit. You know, I've had bad spirits around me and they don't smell of sulfur. It depends on the actual spirit. It depends on what they do. It depends on the way you feel. More importantly, if you are reacting strange, if someone around you is beginning to suddenly become very edgy, very angry, pretty much what you're going to find is the majority of bad spirit, if you want to put it that way, are going to be arsehole spirits. Arsehole spirits are ones that, you know, they thrive on people being at heads with one another. They cannot stand people having harmonious relationships around them. I know you're there. They can't stand people being harmonious. They can't stand people showing affection. They want to destroy that. Their first intent is, I want to stop that. I want to nip it in the bud. I do not want that person wanting to be close or intimate with their partner. I'm going to drive a wedge through this relationship. It could be a case of turning that person, you know, exhausted, so that they don't want to feel, you know, held. They want to be left alone. They go off. They suddenly start having more of an interest in other things. They'll probably, you know, drive an interest towards video games, things like that. Yeah, I knew you wouldn't walk in. There, I've got a spirit that is standing over near where my dog has his little bed. He came in, looked, and then he just did a about turn and walked out. So they're sitting basically on top of his bed, holding their knees to their chest. Yeah, I can see you. I don't know who you are. I'm going to find that out in a minute. Oh, you don't want to stay around me. Okay. C'est la vie. Sorry, this thing was just in here. As soon as I said I'm going to find out who you are, up they get and walk out. Never can tell. You never can tell. Yeah, so this is the thing too. You don't know who you are having around you until you start seeing like reactions. You might get mood swings yourself. You might have occasions where you're feeling okay, you wake up okay, and then all of a sudden you just get moody. You get really aggressive. You start, you know, you might start swearing. You might start, you know, feeling vengeful towards somebody out of the blue. It can happen. That's when you know you've got something negative around you. Now look, there are some times where you might not have a bad spirit. You might be just having a mood swing. This is where you've got to identify the difference, because as women We have mood swings, but guess what? So do men. Men have mood swings too. It's like a part of life, and don't just blame everything on a bad spirit. Sometimes it is a person. It is a person's stubbornness. It could be a person who has issues. Nobody's perfect, so just know that, you know, there could be anything around you, especially if you're asking them to be around you. Like I said, you don't know what you get, and there's no, it's not like you can say, I want these kinds of spirits around me and I don't want that kind. You don't have bouncers in the spirit world saying, all right, now you can come through and you can stay out. I don't know where people get that idea, because just like you can have arsehole people in this world, you can have arseholes in the spirit world who will, you know, try to bring you down. If they're feeling crappy, they want other people to feel crappy. So just be aware of that. You know, that's why I can't understand people who say, oh, you're so lucky. You're so lucky to have that gift. Sometimes I think, is it a gift or is it a curse? I don't believe in curses per se, but if I were to say a curse, I would say, yep, this is a curse, because there are certain things you don't want to know. And then when you start seeing things and things start happening and people start getting back, and you know, like, it's good to hear when you're doing a reading for somebody how that reading went, did it connect, blah blah blah, but it sometimes feels like you're the bearer of bad tidings. I have had occasions where I think, bloody hell, can't I hear something positive? Can't I see or feel something positive for this person? It's like I'm on a roll where everything's doom and gloom, but that's how it comes up. That's how I'm getting things. And I have to sometimes pause and think, okay, why am I getting all this? What's going on? What have I got around me? Is that an influence? But then I'm hearing back from people saying, yeah, that happened, or that's right, that's what's happening now, or this is, you know, like, it might not happen straight away, but it's in the path, and it's a horrible feeling. Let me just put it like that. So anyone who thinks this is wonderful, get your mind out of the gutter. It's not like that. It's not always wonderful. I haven't, you know, and just sort of like on that note, when we're talking about spirits and everything like that, I never studied this. I have never gone and done a course on mediumship. I've never done a course on tarot. I have no clue how those courses go. When I had my groups that I would do at the actual office, these were things that were taught through my spirit. Like, she would say, okay, send those, when those people go, I want you to be focusing on this, and ask them when they come back what message was being sent out. Some of them were doing really well. They were actually starting to develop what they had, but personally I had never done that, and I would never go out of my way, even if I had the opportunity earlier, which I probably could had. I never had that desire to want to feed it, if you want to put it that way. So just be careful. I just can't stress it enough. Okay, so let me check this time. 7:10. Any other questions? So in regards of the for Sonia, in regards of the sheep head, just be aware this may be the way that the child is described. I mean, they're 3 years old. They may be seeing something that is either not completely formed. Sometimes spirits don't completely manifest. You might have a manifestation, a partial manifestation, and so they're filling in the blanks. If they see like part of a face, Like, I'll never forget the time when I did a giveaway for the Blacktown City Guardian, and there were 3 giveaways, and this lady turned up. As soon as she sat down, her mother was telling me, oh, you know, tell her Margaret's here. I said, Margaret's here. She goes, oh, it's my mother, blah, blah, blah. Then all of a sudden, there's this man standing beside her with half a face. All I could see was half of his face, and the other half of his head gone. And I was describing her, what I could see, to this woman, who said, I know who it is. And I don't know whether she said it was an uncle or a cousin or whatever, but he apparently had some type of tumour on his face that covered one side completely, and that's what killed him. It burst. And she said she will never forget that day. She said it was like whatever that, you know, it was like a cancerous tumour. It had actually eaten away the skull and turned it to jelly on one side, that when that thing burst, there was like blood and everything, all like horrible description, but this was what she said happened, all over his pillow, and there was parts of bone. You know, it was like something you'd think in a horror movie per se, but that's what it showed me. Obviously, if he had shown me a full, complete appearance, she wouldn't identify who he was. And this was back in the day where there were no computers, no laptops, no Facebook, nothing. So that was a really interesting visitation, and I wasn't even asking any spirits to come through or anything like that. You know, I always had just, you know, done the reading, and that was it. Another occasion, sorry, must be dog hair. Another occasion, I had a person who was actually appearing beside a date, and as he was sitting there, all of a sudden, like, his whole face began to sort of like change before my eyes. It was like dented and all beat up kind of thing. And as I was sitting there, I'm staring at this spirit sitting beside my date and feeling the fear of God come through me. And he was laughing. He thought it was funny. Not the date, because he couldn't see this spirit around him. But he said, what are you looking at? What's over here? And I said, look, you please don't think I'm crazy. And he said, all right, well, now you got me wondering. And this is what the part of the challenge also is. It's not something that people are going to accept straight away. You know, you start talking to somebody about seeing a spirit, they're going to think you're ready for the loony bin. It's not like a type of, I mean, now it's becoming a little bit more acceptable, but still there are people out there with attitudes that people that see things that they can't see must need locking up. It is a big, it's a big challenge, but it's something that is very real and shouldn't be messed around with in any way. What's that? I just saw something pop up. Are there any messages for any of us tonight? Well, good question, but all that I saw around me was that one that was sitting down with their knees tucked up near their chest. But as soon as I communicated and I said, well, I'm going to find out who you are, up they went and walked out. So I can't say that that person is here for anyone in the group tonight. Before I actually came in to set up this camera thing, I did say that if there are any spirits that are wanting to come through tonight, you're most welcome. But if you're going to communicate, communicate. Earlier, I don't know whether you heard the talking around me, and there was actually someone like coming into my home, but there was no response. Even when I said, you know, who is it? No response. So I've still got to go and check, make sure that my stuff is still there. But no, I'm not getting any per se messages. Else I would have said, okay, well, I've got these ones here, I'm going to pass on any messages they've got. this is the thing too, you can't say, yep, just because you've got spirits around or whatever, that, you know, they're all going to communicate. I had one at that point, that one that was sitting there. As soon as I said, I'm going to find out who you are, they left the room. So you can't force them. The one that was talking around me earlier was Chris, who is my resident spirit, and he can't give any messages to anybody because he's obviously not, you know, he doesn't know you. But just know that I would always, and I've never held back from passing on messages to people if there are messages to be given. But I do not walk up to people also in the street, because it has been told to me by Spirit that they would not help me with my readings. They would just basically abandon me. If I walk up to a stranger in the street and tell them that they've got a spirit around them, anyone who does that is a joke, honestly. Because Spirit has actually said straight out, you will not get help from us if you walk up and do that. Because there are times where those spirits are around that person who are needing healing. There could be a mother, it could be a husband or a child of that person, and they're around them because they need some closure, they need some healing, they need support through their grieving. And if you walk up to a person and say, oh, I'm a medium, you've got this, you know, around you, they might of course be, yes, that's wonderful, it's made my day, but then you've got to walk away from that person. They've got to live with that, and then that could make that person all of a sudden feel the urge to want to go and have, you know, more contact and more messages. And you don't know whether that person's got an addiction to seeing psychics and everything. You could be encouraging that addiction. And that's why another thing with Spirit, they will say you shouldn't do any more readings than one every 3 months or 6 months, because what you're doing is feeding what could become an addiction, and you've got to be very careful. I don't want to be responsible for people having an addiction for readings. It was one point a long time ago when I used to do 2KY and WOW FM. There was a time where I lived at Regent's Park and had a granny flat at the back, which was converted into the studio, and people would come and have readings with me. And it got to the point, I had one woman, she was so bad with having readings and everything like that, she would not go out of her home unless she rang me and got the go-ahead to leave her home that day. I mean, it's ridiculous. I actually had to turn her away and say, look, I'm not going to read for you ever again, because there is too much of a dependency on readings to get through the day. That is beyond the joke. That's why with people, you know, like if they go and they have one reading from one person, then go to another person, what they're actually getting is a continuation of that reading. Eventually it won't make any sense and they will mess up their path, which means that nothing will comprehend. They'll be like, oh, they're useless, they're hopeless, don't go to that reader because they told me nothing. But what they're doing is they're actually doing to themselves more harm than good. They're getting, you know, they're blaming a reader for being incorrect. And there are some readers who shouldn't be reading. That's number one. They pick up a deck of tarot cards or whatever, and suddenly they're charging an arm and leg, and they've gotten, you know, they don't know what they're doing. There are people who don't know what they're doing, but there are some people who bounce from reader to reader and then they blame the reader. But it's not the reader's fault, it's their fault, because what they've done is they haven't given time for anything to happen. And the important thing about readings, what people don't understand, is a reading is not there to define your future or to make your future any better than what you're already producing at the moment. some people, they want to know what's ahead, or they want to know how things are going to turn out, but it's also up to them. And the purpose of a reading is to put out sort of like being able to look through some binoculars at what obstacles are in your path and find a way of navigating around them. You can either walk into those obstacles and let them upset your day, or you can do some type of navigation. You know, being forewarned is forearmed, as they put it. But if you go and you have a reading, I had a case where when I worked at the office, I got a phone call and this girl said, "Are you free?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Can I come down now? I'm in the area." I said, "Yes, okay, no problem." She turned up. As soon as she sat down, I felt she'd been to somebody else. And I said, "Have you recently had a reading?" She said, "Oh yes, I've just come from a lady who did a reading." I said, "No, I'm not reading for you." And she said, "But I'm here." I said, "I don't care. You're not having a reading. You've already been to another person." She said, "But I went to another one before her." I said, "No, that's crazy. That is just an addiction." And some people, if you think about it this way, you'll have a person who goes and they either have a phone reading, or they go and see a person, or they have a reading by someone, and they want to hear a yes to something. It could be that, will my lover come back? Will my boyfriend marry me? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. So eventually they'll get a yes, because they have gone from one person to another person to another person, wanting to hear that yes. They don't want to listen to anything. They don't want to hear no. They don't want to hear that at all. And if they're told no, well, they don't know what they're talking about. I'm going to go to somebody else. So then they go to somebody else. But what happens in the meantime is their path is being mapped out further. So that reader is then reading that future path. They might be referring to the present, but the present is the future present. And where they see the past, that may be the present now. So what happens then is eventually they'll get a yes, but it may not be for that person that they're asking about. It may not be for that lover that they're wanting to come into their life. It could be someone else down the track. But what happens is, okay, that doesn't turn out the way that they said that it would. Then they have this idea that all readers are crap, that readers are a big con to get money out of you. And I'll tell you, if you walk up to a person and they do a reading knowing that you've just come and had a reading from somebody else, they are only in it for the money. This is really important. So what's that? Hang on. And the money that would cost. Yes, exactly. So it does. It costs a lot of money. But there are some people who don't think about that. They just want to hear yes. And I'm not going to be one of those readers who are just going to tell you what you want to hear. I think many of you have probably discovered that already. If it's not showing up as a positive, I'm not going to give you that. And if you have had a reading by somebody else and you decide to have a reading with me and it doesn't make sense, it's not my fault, it's your fault, because you didn't wait. But it's not about the money. This is number one. The readings are not about the money, they're about the principle. So always make sure that, you know, get that word out there, because there's going to be readers out there who will not tell you that. They don't care if you go from one person to the next and go to them. You know, if you're telling them what they want to hear, that person's going to think you're wonderful, because you're saying, yes, he's going to come back, you're going to get married, you're going to have 3 kids together. You know, this guy, he loves you unconditionally. They're telling you what you want to hear. If it's not coming up like that, and this is something where you've jumped from one reader to the next, then guess what? It may not even be that person. It may be somebody else down the track. And you may be already 10 years ahead from your reading, only because you've gone from one person to the next. The majority of life path change and influence can happen within 3 months. That's why we say between 3 to 6 months is the best time to have a reading, because there's a difference between a good reading and a great reading. And a good reading is one where you might get a few little things, but when a person has had a reading by somebody else, that means that next reader has to work even harder to undo all that information that person had been fed by that previous reading. And it's hard work, because I've had cases where the person has said, look, I just want to have this reading, blah blah blah, I don't care whether there's, you know, supposed to be a gap. And I'm like, well, that's a bit inconsiderate too, because it means I've got to now work doubly as hard. I've got to undo everything you've been told, and you've got to listen to what I've got to say. And they're like, yeah, I want to listen to what you have to say. Then they say yes at the end of the reading, yes, that makes sense, that makes sense, that makes sense, but no, that's not, you know, that's the past, or that's, you know, that's another relationship. A lot of times that you can have situations turn up in the future, or to come into the future, that have happened in the past, because they're echoing the past. It's like whatever has happened in the past, you haven't learned from that, so it's starting to raise its ugly head again, and it can happen again, but through somebody else. So this is where it's really important. I mean, with readings, they are complicated, and they can be, you know, at times they can just take the they can take the wind out of you, honestly. And just know that it's not something that you should be, you know, getting yourself addicted to. Look, as a reader myself, I wouldn't say to a person, you know, if you want to get the lucky lotto numbers and everything like that, I'm going to give them to you 100% of the time. There have been occasions, like a customer that actually had a reading with me, they asked for the best time to buy a lottery ticket or some bloody thing, and it came up in this particular month at a certain date. So I said, look, you know, I don't always trust that, to be honest with you, but this is what's coming up. So, you know, if it is lucky, it's lucky. If it's not, you know, that's a gamble you take. Well, it was lucky because she actually won a house. But that's great, but you're not going to have that every time, you know. And that's the same, the way I look at it. It's like when I've taken out, you know, like occasionally I will do a, you know, a Keno thing or whatever. And this particular day, my dad said to me from Spirit, write down these numbers. So I wrote down these numbers, and I thought, well, we don't go up to this particular number in our lotto or whatever, so I don't know what to use that for. And he said, just keep those numbers. So sure enough, I saw Keno. I thought, oh, I might put those numbers down, and I only played $1, and that was it. And I won over $1,600 on that one particular thing, because all those numbers turned up. So that was interesting. But again, it comes down to, you know, it is luck. I guess at the end of the day, you don't just take everything as gospel. Know that there are some things that are going to come up that are, you know, are going to be more warnings, if anything. So just make sure you leave a gap between all readings, and that includes if you do the cards yourself. If oh my God, I've had cases where I've seen, when I'm doing my pre-read, these images like of people doing cards, and they will put the cards down, and then they will shuffle them again, and then they'll put them down again. I'm thinking, someone I'm going to be reading for is determined to get an answer, yes, because I'm seeing them continually asking like the same question over and over. Does he love me? And they're laying out these cards, and then, does he love me? Doing it again and again and again, and then I will write down what I'm seeing. And today I had a customer who actually said to me the same thing, like, I just want to know, does he love me? And I said to her, you weren't doing any cards by any chance at all? She said, oh yeah, I do have a deck of cards, and I've been asking that question. And I said, how many times were you asking that question in a row? They said, why, does it matter? I said, yeah, it matters. If it came up, she said, well, I couldn't understand what it meant. And I said, so you did it again? And then she said, yeah, and I was looking online to see what the meaning was. I said, you weren't feeling what the meaning was? She said, well, I don't know, what does the Ten of Swords mean? I went, no, it means no. He doesn't love you. And she said, well, that was a bit harsh. I said, well, that's what it means. He doesn't love you. But she said, but then the next time I did it, oh, how many times? She said, oh, I didn't count. So she was asking me, does he love her? I said, well, I can't even tell you now, because depending on the amount of times you've done those cards, you've affected it. If something comes up, yes, and you're trying to test it as well, know that Spirit will know if you're testing it. So you can get a positive on one hand, and then you go testing that, like, second opinion, so to speak. You could be stuffing up that path. You could be effectively damaging that next, or that actual passage. What is there as something good, because you're testing it, they're like, well, they don't have trust, they don't have any faith in it, so they're not going to get it. And that's how Spirit look at things. I'm going to love you and leave you. Thank you so much for being a part of our live stream tonight. I hope I've covered everything that I possibly can in regards to the pets and spirits and connecting with Spirit and welcoming Spirit and readings. So anyway, thank you so much. Bye bye. Have a great weekend, what's left of it, and I will see you again in the future for next Sunday's live stream. Take care.